All right, welcome everyone to this week's edition of Meaningful Monday. There's been a lot that's happened in the last 2 weeks. We've seen an invasion by Russia into Ukraine. And of course, there's all sorts of things. We just had a presidential address last night. We've had the CDC declaring some new regulations on COVID as it seems to be plummeting as well. There's been a lot going on as well in markets. You've seen some volatility here that's gone along with this as well, which we'll talk a little bit about today. There's some great statistics that go with that too. But most of all today, our goal is to go big, to begin to bring you again some hope. Typically, you'll find that spring is coming. That's another positive that's nice to see. You're starting to see warm days, at least here in Wisconsin. We've had 4 or 5 days over freezing, which is quite nice to see. For those of you in Florida, I don't want to hear about it. I know you've been over freezing every day except for that 27-degree day you had last month. So that was your penance, if you will. But today, really, I really want to bring to your attention really care and love for the people who are in Ukraine, who are not part of the conflict, who are the civilians in the way. So we just want to say maybe even a quick moment of silence for them. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds here, just a quick moment of silence and gratitude for those who are suffering, who really don't deserve it. All right, thank you. A lot of us live in a society here that we're fairly insulated from what goes on in other countries. To some, they don't even know quite what happens. They're not even that concerned. We just want to make sure we share the gratitude, hope, and care that we have for the entire nation, for the entire world, I should say, as well. So we wish them the best and that they're protected from whatever is occurring in their neighborhoods. So with us today, when it comes to what's going on, there's a lot of discussion last night about tax and really about people who we really want to pass legislation. I only watched part of it because that's really what I do. I don't really listen to much summary. I don't listen to much of it because I'm not into that into politics. But hearing some of the policy, it's the consistency of raising taxes on some, but raising the middle class and a lot of promises. I think, if you will, and if it's your candidate, great. If it's not your candidate, that's, it is what it is. I'm sure you had different opinions. But if you look at those as well for the economy, the market, the biggest thing we've seen is an invasion. Previous invasions have not caused massive displacement in the market, except for temporarily. And I think we have some good stats coming up from Zach and from Ken as well. So I won't go too much into those. If they don't bring up the ones I want to hear, I'll bring them up afterward. So that's how we'll go. But what I wanted to do today is a couple different things I'd said. I've been given, very fortunately, a book called Trust and Inspire. It's a pre-copy. It comes out, and here's my notes and all that are in it as well. But it's a great book. But we've been given this by Stephen M. R. Covey. You might know Stephen Covey from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Well, this is his son, Stephen M. R. Covey. So I've been going through this book and really getting a lot of what's going on with some new leadership. We'll talk more about this. I'm not supposed to quote anything in the book on a go-forward basis, but I can quote some stuff from his last book, if you will. Here's a good quote that comes from the previous book, which is, treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you'll help them to become what they're capable of being. Think about this. So this is a big key. Treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you'll help them become what they're capable of being. Wonderful statement. It's something that we believe in here, as all of you are leaders in your family and your community as well, despite whether you think so or not. So a big portion of ours is really about that. Here's what's interesting. So last thing before I kind of pass this on, I'm going to bring Lisa on right after myself. She's got a few updates just on, not for the things that we need to look at and pay attention to. That'll be Ashley at the end, but some changes in some of the Docusign documents and how that process goes. But I think we live in a society of instant gratification. Instant meals, instant messaging, instant cash, instant loans, instant fake tans, instant fortunes won through like lotteries. There's a great danger in the short-termism. And what it looks like to me today is to keep a view of the long term. So these things will occur. If you actually looked at something that you probably just received in the mail just this last week, and I'm sure you've all been poring over it, and I'm sure it's backward here on screen, but welcome to 2022, or as you see it, welcome to 2202. Now that's a long view. But as you see, this is a wonderful piece, if you will. It's kind of a timeless piece for us. But if we go to the second page, at the very top, where I think the alignment says, reflect, realign, and rethink. It kind of has a few statements that you're going to see come back out in an email to you as well. And one of them is some of the things we most generally like will think will happen in the coming year. The lethality of the virus will continue to wane. B, the world economy continues to reopen. C, corporate earnings continue to advance. D, the Federal Reserve will drain excess liquidity, which will result in some increase in interest rates. E, inflation subsides somewhat. F, barring some other exogenous variable. What did we just have this week? We had an exogenous variable. That is an invasion of Ukraine. People thought, oh, I knew it was coming. Some thought they didn't. Some didn't have any idea. But when you look at those things, those are timeless things we're prepared for. Your portfolio is prepared for. We're prepared for in your planning as well. Many of these exogenous variables, which basically mean things out of left field, the way Yogi Berra would say it, occur. And that's something a little more serious I wanted to bring to you today as well. One thing I want to do is I usually go big in gratitude. One big thing for myself is I really appreciate the parenting ability that my daughters offer to me. They give you great things and help you become a better person, which I think is outstanding. It's kind of funny. I like to sing old songs, and my youngest daughter likes to hear them, but my daughter asked me to quit singing I'm a Believer. You know that song by the Monkees, remember? I'm a believer. She asked me to quit singing that. It was kind of funny. I thought she was joking. And then I saw her face. Anyway, 4 or 5 of you will get that one. And I want to pass this off to Lisa.
Thank you, Chris. I'm a believer. So.
What's that?
Talking of instant, everyone knows about Docusign and how great it is that we now have the advantage to be able to instantly sign documents. And Raymond James, as you all know, anyone who's used Docusign, we get emails sent to your email with the document, and then you have a cellular phone, a text message would get sent for you to sign the documents, open, and then view the documents, and then we can upload multiple forms to one envelope packet. Now, with this now being multiple, Docusign has kind of changed the layout where whenever you went in and clicked to view and you clicked sign, and then there was a next tab to go to the next page, and then the next page until you'd finished all the document, all the pages, there is now a finish tab at the bottom. So I just advise you not to click the finish tab accidentally instead of the next. If there's a next, just keep clicking next until you've gone through every page and not accidentally click the finish. So at the end, you will see the finish tab, and there'll be no more next tab. So then you can just, there's an actual adopt and sign at the bottom, and that's, you don't physically have to sign your signature. You can click the adopt and sign and it'll put your name in that signature bottom, and then you can just click finish right at the end of the document. It just helps because sometimes some pages get missed with a signature if you accidentally hit the, we don't know why Docusign has done it, but it just did an upgrade, and with us being able to send multiple pages in one envelope, which is great, so you don't get like several emails. It's just a little bit, some things that can get missed. So just wanted to let you know that that is what is updated with Docusign. You don't have to have client access with Docusign. You can use, we can send them, and you can just log in with your cell phone. So it's no problem there, but it's a great thing. And like Chris said, it's instantaneous, it's secure, and it's a wonderful thing that Raymond James have given to us. Not all Raymond James forms are Docusign available as yet, but we're very much there, 90% of the forms. So there are still some that would either be mailed or emailed, but definitely a large percentage of the forms, and more coming. So it's a great thing. So I'm glad you're all able to use it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Awesome. So what's your go big?
I already disappeared. My go big is obviously with what's going on in the world. I'm still grateful that we are, like you said, Chris, we're kind of out of the, we're not out of the loop, but you know, we're out of it. I'm actually leaving for, it's my last day at work today for this week. I have a short trip with a girlfriend whose birthday it is this weekend. We're going to Vegas. So my go big is go big. Hopefully I go big. I win big. Yeah.
Thank you. Awesome. I appreciate it. So if I was to really talk about today, and maybe what we should talk about the timelessness and long view, let's call it maybe choose faith over fear. So what happens when we get in these exogenous events or things out of left field? Fear sets in. So there's two things you can do. Many people in fear, as evidenced by the market, they tend to sell. They tend to run out of the market. They tend to think they can time it and get out and then get back in. But I would say choose faith over fear. You're going to actually find variables, which is many of the best returning days. We had 2 days, I think it was Thursday last week, where the market went up, it swung 7% in a session. You wouldn't have known that. Nobody would. So if you get out and miss that, you miss 7%. That's a lot of money just on a single day or two. So looking at that again, this continually proves and adds evidence to the faith over fear. It's just a much better way to choose than to try to guess over time. And we study this all the time as well. So with that, why don't I bring Mike on real quick to talk about what's been going on in some of the research. We've had a bunch going on lately. So Mike, is there anything you have a highlight with as well?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I always have a highlight on something. So talking about keeping the faith, actually, something that, we talk about a lot is having a diversified portfolio. And when I was at the CFA dinner earlier this year, something that they discussed was how strange it is that the S&P 500 has been the best performing index when historically it hasn't. And so they were all kind of contemplating why this is, and they sort of feel that the idea of indexing and the do-it-yourselfers, the place to put their money, or what they think is to put their money, is straight into the S&P 500, which they believe is inflating that index and making it run a little bit more. And plus, at the end of the day, that's where the returns are. There isn't a return in yield, and historically, a lot of people have used bonds as a retirement tool. And so in that instance, when bond prices start to decrease and the yields go up and the buying opportunities there for them to move into bonds, they see a lot of money on the horizon, possibly coming out of the S&P 500, moving into bonds, and so that they can get those new yields that they can actually support themselves in retirement. And because of that, they see potentially the S&P 500 underperforming some of the other indexes. So what does that mean for everybody else? Well, for somebody with a diversified portfolio, we are capitalizing on both sides of that. We are not strictly invested in large cap stocks like the S&P 500 is. We have the other indexes, or stocks, I should say, that are invested in the other indexes within the mutual funds that we own. So we take advantage of the swings in either direction.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it as well. Your go big was very quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Chris, I really appreciate your vocabulary. I feel like every day I'm looking up a new word and learning something specifically by just listening to you talk. So my go big is that I'm grateful for your extended vocabulary.
Thank you. Enjoy loquaciousness. Let me try that again. Enjoy the loquaciousness. Enjoy. I get it from other people. I steal it. Thank you. I don't even know what the words I say mean, but they sound good. So that's what I do. With that, thank you. Why don't I bring it over to Zach? Zach, the oldest member of our team, who's maybe the youngest in years, but the oldest in demeanor. Zach, what's going on? How about you can share your go big and a few items that you have for us today?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Sometimes even those words that Mike mentioned aren't even in the dictionary, like complexify or some other ones as well. So then we have a challenge when we can't find those.
I'm good at Scrabble.
Your own rules, I'm sure. But I'm extremely grateful, real quickly, just for the wisdom that is shared with me. It's extremely humbling to be in this industry with that, with Chris's, Ken's, our teams in general, but also with each of you in meetings. I'm just extremely blessed. I shared that with someone the other day, and for things hitting at unbelievable timely times, in the sense that many of you have heard in my go bigs earlier, just in the sense of creating good habits. And someone introduced me to the book to Atomic Habits. I think I've been kind of behind on the train. It sounds like everyone has read it. But the idea behind it is just 1% incremental improvement. And the story that they shared was the British cycling team. In 2003, they were one of the worst in the entire world. So bad that British cycling companies wouldn't even want to sell the bikes to the team. They got a new coach, and he focused on unbelievably small improvements, like having different uniforms, indoor uniforms for their outdoor, because they had better aerodynamics, different gels that increased recovery, different shoes, different seat. And all of a sudden in 2008, they won 60% of the gold medals at the Beijing Olympics. And from 2000 to 2017, they won 178 world championships, 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals, and 5 Tour de France victories. So just by focusing on small incremental improvements, because we all make massive goals to start the year, and sometimes that goal gets incredibly big and overwhelming when we're not motivated or inspired. And the book really just talks about, in the sense of running, maybe it's just changing the tightness of your shoes instead of focusing on how far you have to run for the day, or just different clothing that potentially makes you feel better after a certain amount of time, whatever the case may be. I'm just extremely grateful for the wisdom shared with me, and also just for 1% improvements on a daily basis. Going into a few different things, Ryan and I spent a lot of time yesterday just trying to find a bunch of timely facts regarding the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I'm sure a lot of you have been overwhelmed by that or receiving plenty of that in other forms. So we don't want to go too far into detail, but a couple real quick interesting ones before we get into market is that when we listened to Frank Kelly, a senior political strategist that shared all of these with us in Raymond James yesterday, Russia has 680 billion in cash reserves. Only half of that is actually available to them right now. The rest is in banks where the sanctions have come into place. So just really interesting to see the global support and the quickness of that support. The one thing they mentioned is we get really concerned over a slowing economy when we raise interest rates a couple basis points. Russia's interest rates spiked from 8% to over 20% with all of their markets and banks closing. And since Putin's time, the ruble, their currency has devalued 75% compared to the US dollar since he took over in the early 2000s or late 90s. And it's gone from 28 rubles for $1 US to over 100, or right around 100 for $1 US. There's a bunch of other interesting facts that they shared, but really just the global support and the quickness of it. It's really the first war that has ever been in our pocket. So extremely interesting to be aware of how often and how quickly we see those. Kind of just lastly, one thing that they mentioned that was interesting was just this could be a massive opportunity for China to broker a deal between Russia and the rest of the world very quickly because of a lot of bad publicity they had with the Olympics and a lot of other things as well. So a lot of things are coming together to potentially end this conflict sooner than later. But as Chris has mentioned before, there's no future facts. And when it comes to humans, we never really know. But just wanted to bring a few different facts that you may not have heard on TV or elsewhere. Kind of transitioning over quickly to the markets. Since the last webinar, we've had a 10% correction in the S&P 500, which contrary to most of the industry, we get extremely excited about just because corrections are necessary. They create a bunch of opportunities for planning and are part of your overall plan in general, whether that's rebalancing, Roth conversions, tax loss harvesting that Ken's talked about before, potentially even tax gain harvesting. And a chart I'll show you quickly after I go through the markets is just showing the direction in corrections, especially if you invest at a 10% correction as well. But just running through the different indexes like we normally do, the S&P is temporarily down 9.65% on the year. And along with that, another fact, Russia accounts for 0.9% of revenue for the S&P 500 companies. We recently got a question of how much Russia revenue actually affects some of these companies. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, minus 8.38% on the year. The NASDAQ actually reached a bear market temporarily, which is 20% down. Again, the NASDAQ is almost 50% technology now. That one is temporarily down 13.50%. So in just a week's time, it's recovered almost 6%. The Russell 2000, 10.55 on the year, temporarily down. The growth side and the value side, still the differential, 14.69, temporarily down on the growth, 6.37. International, a little bit less than US so far, 7.40 for international. Emerging markets, 5.11. Emerging markets was overperforming to start the year, and then emerging markets slightly touches quite a bit of Russia and a few different things with oil and others. But a few quick charts that I want to share with you before I pass it to Chris and Ken. Just give me a second to pull these up. The first one we recently went through. Can you guys see my screen, Chris and Ken? Perfect. So this is the frequency of S&P 500 rolling periods with positive returns over the last 52 years. On the 1 day, 54% of the time it's positive, 46% negative. Throughout all these different time periods, all of a sudden we get to 1 year out, and 81% of rolling year periods since 1969 on a 1 year basis, 81% of the time, continually increases each and every year till finally we get to 15-year rolling periods. After the last 52 years, 100% of the time it's been positive. So that's where the long-term perspective comes into play that we continually talk about, because most of our retirements or investing lifetime, if you're still contributing, it's much longer than 15 years. Just real quickly, want to share a quick other one before I pass it back. And this is for those of you that are still investing during this time frame. We get a lot of questions. When is the right time to invest? If the plan dictates it, it's when the money is available. However, if you're looking for other potential opportunities or you had extra cash on the sidelines, from a liquidity event of some kind. When they looked over history since 1950, when the S&P goes 10% off of highs, if you were to invest at that 10% temporary correction, the next 12-month return has a median return of 15%. If we were to do nothing and not get out of the markets in any form nor invest, it is still a 10% median return over 12 months. So could be potential great opportunities if you have cash on the sidelines, or just another great reason if you are contributing to 401ks or on a plan contribution to keep up with that, or even be potentially more aggressive with that in the short term. With that, I'll pass it back to Chris.
All right, that's all, folks. We'll see you next time as we run over. And no, I'm kidding. Thanks, Zach, I appreciate that. So here's one of the keys. If you happen to buy at the low, historically, you end up with a 15% return. If you happen not to buy when the market has a 10% downturn, your average return is 10%. Think about that. So wait a minute, even sitting still is a good idea. So here, geopolitical events and the S&P 500 reactions. Just as you go through it, I'm going to read them very quick and I'll pass over to Ken. North Korea invades South, Twin Towers attack, Pearl Harbor attack, Kennedy assassination, Boston Marathon bombing, Madrid bombing, 6-day war, Iraq invades Kuwait, Iranian general killed in airstrike, Munich Olympics, there's more and more, Reagan shooting. I can keep going through this back to the 1964. All of these have averaged on the day it happens. The day one move is 1.1%. The total drawdown of the S&P is 4.6%. Days to the bottom is about 20. Average days to recover is 43. So you look at that. That's from Bloomberg and Partners. So it's crazy to look at. But even like the North Korea invades South, that was a 12.9% drawdown. This was larger than that. This was larger than that at one point. And these tend to have a very quick recovery as well. Anyway, it's interesting to see those as we go through. One thing back to Mike, when Mike said something about loquaciousness, it reminds me, my daughter one time bought me a really cheap dictionary. It was hilarious. I could not find the words to thank her. Anyway, why don't we pass this on to Ken? Thanks, Ken. We got about 4 minutes for you. And no, I'm just joking.
All good. No, all good. I'll make a few points here. A lot of great information that was already disseminated here in the webinar. So my go big is I'm grateful for the peace we have here locally. I mean, we don't have to wake up and go to Madison and defend our capital right now, which is pretty amazing. So for those who are affected, my heart goes out to you. We pray for you. If there's anything that we can do for you, let us know. We'd be happy to do it for you. So my other one is I've been isolated a little bit at home with COVID recently. My wife, I've actually been in my bedroom for the last week or so. I haven't come out. So I didn't want to get the kids sick or Sarah sick. So my gratitude goes out to my wife for taking good care of me during this time frame as well. So, what are we seeing? Number one is, we're coached by Ed Slott, who is the foremost expert in IRA and tax planning. And they came out and they just told us what we're doing right now is February 23rd, 2022. So about a week ago, there was a 275-page document that was released. And we're going through that right now because it's all about the actual rules of what the Secure Act meant to say as far as the RMD rules, whether it's your own RMD or whether it's an inherited IRA RMD. All the rules are out now. So we're actually perusing that. Some of you read Clancy and King, we read tax law. So we're on that right now. Again, we don't know much about it right now, but we will disseminate the important information to you when we do know more. But it was released a week ago, and so we're on that piece right now. So, there's a lot of technical stuff said today. I'm going to make a few observations just in general. Number one, you guys have been great. Our clients have not called in. So if you're wondering what other people are doing right now, our clients have not called in and said, I'm worried about this. It's unfortunate that we're going through a war. I think a lot of you expected the markets to go down at some point in time, just not because of a war, if that makes sense. So I think my hat goes off to all of you because you've been patient, you've been disciplined, you have the faith. So we appreciate that. The second observation is that a lot of the younger investors we have come from your grandkids or your kids. And so those conversations start with you at home about investing money, about saving money for your future. And then all of a sudden they come and see us to put a plan together. And so when we're looking at our younger investors and what they're doing right now, they're trying to max out Roth IRAs because the markets are temporarily down. They understand the buying opportunity. So number one is their mindset. Number two, it probably comes from you at some point in time. So thank you for allowing them to become great investors. Again, we're here to help them as well. Number three is, I think really the main thing that most people are concerned with that I'm hearing are tax documents and when they're going to come out so we can do their taxes. That's really what I'm hearing right now. It's a lot of questions we field here in the office right now. So they're coming. If you haven't got them already, we're on it. We're paying attention every day as they become available to you. So we're on that. And number four is sometimes we need a little refresher. Sometimes we need to just to touch base really quickly, just to refresh, to understand what the plan is, where we're going, why we're doing what we're doing. And whether that takes 1 minute or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, that refresher sometimes really brings us back to the same to the same end goal that we have together here. So again, we're here for that. I have much more other stuff to say, but I know that Chris probably wants to finish up here. We also have, the Gentian happenings coming up here in a second as well.
No problem, Kim. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're healthy. I'm glad you're on the mend, if you will. And you maybe are the very last beacon of the COVID virus. Maybe you are the end of it. Ken, thank you. No, I appreciate that as well. I speak about some of this in a crazy way. So this weekend, I spent the entire weekend in Wisconsin, probably the place that everybody in the world wants to visit. And it's probably the single premier destination in Wisconsin, which is, of course, the Wisconsin Dells. And I spent from 6 a.m. there on a Saturday morning all the way through Sunday, which was great, seeing the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum, all the different things. I mean, you guys have seen them, all the duck boats, all that, except it's frozen, so you couldn't use them. However, what was interesting is we went to Buffalo Phil's, the restaurant that serves you by train. Many of you have been there or maybe seen it. There was a woman who was helping the table of 9, which is our daughters, and the table of 9 of us who were adults. And I noticed she had a slight accent. So of course, me being the only one who's super curious usually is I said, hey, where are you from? And she said she was from Russia. So of course, my very first question is, what do you think of what's going on? It led to a 20-minute discussion. I apologize to everybody else in the restaurant because she told us her history of Russia and the sadness of her telling her mother that she's never coming home because if she protests Putin, she's thrown in jail and she's basically marked for the rest of her life. So she had to make the tearful choice. Now, as she's going through that, she's also talking her Ukrainian friend who also works at Buffalo Phil's and how she walked in that morning and simply burst into tears when she found out the invasion was occurring because she doesn't know where her family is. So it became a very tender moment and she revealed some incredible things. She said, most of the people who run our country are over 65 and the average man who lives in our country, runs the country, is over 65. They'll be dying off soon. We believe, and this is the younger population, that this gentleman who's running it, this not gentleman, she called him something else, Putin, is crazy. He's gone absolutely nuts. He's delusional, but he does run the country. But her parents and the grandparents say, but it's okay because we have food. We don't have famine. We have, things are relatively okay, so we better leave it that way. She says in 10 years, there will be a massive uprising because the uprising of 5,000 people who are willing to be arrested, shot, and thrown in jail right now for protests is going to grow dramatically. It was an interesting, you hear this, and it's going to maybe be called a beacon of hope between both Russia and China, that the generation who's being oppressed and commanded and controlled is going to look to be trusted and inspired at some point and actually change the regime dramatically. So it was a very interesting conversation, I'd say, very tearful, very heartfelt. We give her a hug at the end. We sent her off with some extra money to maybe give back to anybody that she could, that she knew in Ukraine, and help the other waitress out that wasn't there. It was a really heartfelt, touching moment to hear something from somebody who's from there. And it reminds me of the song, and I think I talked about this in Love Your Enemies, our book club, but Sting wrote a song, and in there it's, I guess, do the Russians love their children too? I hope the Russians love their children too. Matter of fact, the Russians do. This brings back Cold War era thoughts. Remember, most people are good. Most Russians are good. There's a few oligarchs that are now having their assets seized. That's the first time that's happened. Their yachts, their homes, their apartments in Times Square. Their apartments on Madison, they're all being, seized. So a very interesting time, if you will, in the world indeed. And this is the first of many things that Putin, who had supporters, is probably going to lose a bunch for what's going on. Anyway, interesting conversation. Whatever opinion you may have is valid. It's yours. I appreciate that. But this was interesting to hear from this young woman at Buffalo Phil's, a very unexpected conversation that meant quite a bit as we moved on. So with that, there's invasion, there's inflation, there's interest rates, there's a tech bubble, there's volatility, there's people wanting to go to cash. There's all that stuff out there in the markets today. All that is a recipe for unrest that historically and typically means a fairly solid return. Those are the recipes that can lead to a fairly decent return out of situations like this as well. So I just want to reiterate that with you too. Before we go, I want to have Ashley come in and really give us what's the probably most important aspect of our entire program today, which is the happenings that you should pay attention to. And maybe not just the one that I started with here, because this is a great seminal piece. If you need another one of these, let us know. I don't know if we have any, but this is a great piece. We can even send it to you electronically, because this is more of a timeless piece. If you look at Welcome to 2022, it could say welcome to the next decades of your life. It's a very long viewed piece, and maybe you've already read it, but it's really our philosophies put down, written in a wonderful format that the team put together. So anyway, Ashley, what's going on? What happening should we pay attention to?
Of course. Thank you, Chris. And I guess I'm grateful for the country that we live in, because I do have the sense of security and safety. So I'm just grateful for that at this time. A couple of things that I wanted to point out and just bring to your attention coming from our Monday bulletin is tomorrow we are actually going to be having Michelle Norris back with us to kick off our 2022 Health and Wealth series. And she will be touching and checking in on those New Year's resolutions that you sent, as well as bringing some light to a hot topic that she has pointed out to us, and that is the topic of diabetes, both prevention as well as some management skill techniques that she can bring to light for all of us. So again, if you haven't registered, please take a look at our bulletin and make sure you register for tomorrow's session with Michelle Norris at 10 a.m. Central Time. We look forward to seeing you guys back then. Next week, Tuesday, is International Women's Day. So the Ladies and Gentian group will once again be back on Zoom, and we invite you, if you have not already attended, and those that have attended, to join us for some fun International Women's Day trivia and just for some wonderful conversation. So that's another thing, again, next week, Tuesday at 10 a.m. that we encourage you to sign up for. And the last thing that I just wanted to quickly touch on is Wednesday, March 16th, we will have our March birthday celebration for those that are celebrating a birthday in the month of March. We do encourage you to bring your guests, a spouse, a friend, just to celebrate you. Again, that is March the 16th, right here at our office at Gentian at 11 a.m. We will have some lunch, coffee, and some cake to celebrate you. So those are the few highlights that I just wanted to bring to your attention quickly. And of course, 2 weeks from today on March the 16th as well, we will be right back here for our next bi-weekly update at 9 a.m. Chris, that's all I have to point out today.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ashley. I appreciate that as well. Thank you all very much for the introductions you've had. We've had a wonderful last couple of months. Thank you for the team as well. The team has really been of wonderful support. If we had people who've both been out for health reasons and other reasons, and for weddings. One of the biggest thing was obviously somebody on our team here was married in a country far, far away. And congratulations to Peter and Lindsay. Ash and I were very fortunate enough to be there, so we want to celebrate that. Let's all give Peter a wonderful hand and praise for him for being married and now joining the rest of us. So now we can share all of our married stories. So Peter, thank you. That's very exciting. Awesome. Wonderful weather, 82 degrees and windy. I mean, come on. It could have been a little bit better, maybe last winter. I was idyllic and perfect. So we want to thank very much Peter for allowing us to be there and share the small audience, if you will, of the wedding that was down there in the Dominican Republic in Punta Cana. Beautiful place, wonderful wedding, beautiful people. So love you and thank you very much. With that, we wanted to close today, but here's something. It's springtime, right? You know, I have an affinity and an absolute love for trees. Well, let me ask you a question, because I really understand trees very well. I speak to them, they speak to me. But how do trees feel in the spring? Relieved. So with that, I want to leave you with a little bit of humor at the end of the day, the beginning of the day, I should say. So with that, share that with your kids and grandkids, because they will think that's funny. It'll take them a bit to get it if they're real young, but that's some good stuff. So with that, we're at Gentian here. Obviously, we help you plan it, live it, and then obviously give it. Thank you tremendously for the introductions you give to us, for being our client. We want to be number one for you. Our intention is to be here for you no matter what. Any situation, it's not a silly question. It's the team that we have here that is here to help and guide you to make your retirement as good as best you possibly can. So we do that every single day. Our intention is to provide you service and really an experience that is allowing you to do exactly what you'd like in retirement. So always feel free to contact us in any form. Thank you again for today. We want to go out and be grateful, have a wonderful day, be funny. I'm going to change that up a little bit today, be funny, and have some hope. There's great hope in the world as well. As spring comes, as we're finding maybe some waning on COVID, let's just hope for some sort of resolution of this conflict, if you will, also in Eastern Europe. With that, we'll see you in 2 weeks if we don't see you beforehand. Thank you. One more thing before we go. One of the books that I read is everybody's supposed to give themselves a high five every day. It's going to be a self-assurance. So with that, anybody who's on the screen that you can see now, if we want to put that out there, give yourself a high five, give us all a high five. Thank you. We appreciate that. Here's to affirmation. Most importantly, self-acceptance. Accept yourself. You are fantastic. With that, I'll let you move forward. Have a great rest of your day.